also put it in the description.
So yeah, I'm Venky, short for Venkatesh. I have two channels predominantly. It's one for art and one for photography. My art account is called Mustard Souls, so which is.
Oh yeah, you can. That's great. You can write it. Right.
That's the IG. And my photography account is Venky,
Really,
which
I don't
is
know.
my
Your
name.
handwriting is quite good, even with this brush.
Venky is living. That's my photographer's account. So now we are almost roughly there. So the idea of tree is on the place. We have the colors in place. Now, if you want to make it particularly look like something, then we go for study. Now, what I would do is, okay, I want to make it look a bit more detailed. Then I'll go look for some pictures, and I would look for particular way the trunk looks. So yeah, I mean, so it's a two thing is whether it's a living thing or it's a non-living, it's an inanimate object. And once I figure that out, I look for expressions. So usually, right, like when we see things, we have this first glimpse, like an impression of what it is, right? So usually if it's a car, it's the headlights that catches our attention, or if it's the front grille, whatever is the prominent feature. So I anchor my interest towards that, and then I construct outwards from there. So that was the whole idea. And of course, now we are drawing digital, that's one thing. But if you're drawing on paper, what I would do is what I want to draw, I'll take what I'm seeing, I'll put it on the page and try to measure the ends of those that particular area from the edges of the paper. So that's one thing I learned lately, because sometimes when we, like, for example, when people try to draw portraits, they are too focused on the eye, and after they draw the eye in the center of the page, they realize either they have too much head space or they don't have enough space for the body. So what I would do is I would just I would just think of what I want to draw, like what catches my attention, and I will see how far it is from the corners of my page. So once I've done that, then I'll start drawing that. And sometimes this is something I got recently. If it's a facial expression, then I will try to recreate that expression in my own face, like try to feel that expression or the state of mind. That kind of helps me to get in the emotion of that particular thing, which is why I feel like nowadays when I draw portraits, it has more life to it than before. So because kind of like trying to reflect the expression and then draw it from my own interpretation. That's one. And if it's a non-living object, if it's like a big shape, then I look for lines, like huge lines. That's what we call leading lines, right? So I see all those huge lines or shapes which are in the composition. For example, if it's a building, so building has the, if you're seeing the building from the front or from the three-quarter side, then you have this one line which leads all the way from ground till sky. So you draw that line first and then distribute your picture around it. So that's one. So that's the thing. Like once you look for emotions, if it has a face, usually there's emotions on animals, people, and even like automobiles which are designed with that idea to show certain expression. So so you take that first part and then try to contemplate it, and then you look for shapes. Say, for example, when it comes to faces, uh, now I'm trying to speak all of those things, but what I'm going to do in the classes, when I'm going to ask someone and they're going to suggest me some particular topic of some object which they are interested, which are they interested in to draw, then I'll use that to explain the elements from that. Now I'm trying to compare both how I work with living things and non-living things at the same time. So it sounds a bit confusing. So yeah, so if it's a bigger object, then I look for shapes. So if it's a face, then I look for how round or how elongated it is, like the chin lines. And and then if it is a building, then I look for like if it's a square, if it's a rectangle, if it has a particular curve on one side, then I'll try to draw that. And once that happens, then I'll try to uh, see what I'm looking at. Try to see that in the picture. So usually there are like few particular lines which you draw. For face, it's usually like the chin line, chin line, and the forehead line, and then the nose will give you like the overall idea of the face. And then you draw the eyes, then you'll see more resemblance to it. And then you draw the mouth, you'll see the expression to it. So once that's there, you're almost like 70%. You got what you want to draw, and after that you go further to learn the colors. What are the colors? If you're going to do it in colors, you look for what are the colors in it, and what different types of colors in it. So you can start with primary colors like blues. How many blues are there? How many reds are there? And how many greens are there? So once you do that, you know that okay, if it's a landscape, like big part of the center is green, and then the top part is sky, which is blue, and then bottom part, say if it's mud, then it's brown, and so.
When you say how many colors there are, you mean
How many
in
distinct
your,
colors? How many distinct colors?
yeah, but you mean the colors you see in your head?
Yes.
Because we're drawing a particular
In my head, not exactly in my head. Like yeah, usually if it is an object that I recognize, then I look for the colors. Like for example, uh, one fundamental thing I would say about imagination, which is misinterpreted, is like we cannot imagine that we haven't seen already.
Yes.
We imagine using things we have seen, we combine it in different forms. So what we have seen is distinct. Say for example, if I'm imagining a plant, I have seen plants which are predominantly green. So eventually I'll think of plants as green in my head. So then I take those colors, and then from there I will try to distort it in my own ways, like for how I want to get there. Sometimes that happens even before we try to draw. Sometimes we think of a green tree, and then we think of it to be, say, purple, and then we decide before we draw that I want the trees to be purple. And sometimes we just draw like halfway green, and then we say, okay, I want the branches to be like this. So once we see a particular form, then we want to improvise as we draw. And that comes as we draw, and with the freedom of like trying. That's what I would say. And because the best thing about imagination is you have no expectations. Your only expectation is to get it on paper, get it out of your head and to get it on paper. There's no other expectations. It doesn't have to look like something. It doesn't have to imitate something that already exists. That's why it's easy to start. It's easy to draw from imagination, unlike how most people say, "Oh, I cannot draw from imagination. I can only draw from what I see." So that is going to be like my selling point for
Yeah, so I would say I mean, you have an expectation, but I would say you don't have a pressure. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, for in my case, expectation is very synonymous with pressure. It's like if there is expectation, then you have to meet it, right? So if you don't, if you feel like you cannot meet it, that's pressure. So yeah, you can say you have a goal, but you don't have an expectation to meet it. So that's the thing. So there's like I feel like there's a little bit of philosophy here and there, but yeah, but that's the whole idea. And in terms of technicality, as I said, like I'll think for what I want to draw. I'll put it on a place, put it put it on the paper before I draw. Like in my mind, I'll put it on my paper and then see how far it is from the corners. So once I draw this, I will try to connect. Say if there is a ground, for example, if it's a person standing, if there is a ground, then I will try to connect that particular point which I'm drawing, which I'm interested in, like the facial expression with the ground through the body. So I'll just draw rough lines to describe his body all the way where it reaches the ground, and then I'll expand from there.
Okay, I see.
And then I think I'll just, as I draw, I can explain more. For example, now,
So that's
yeah.
great. So, for example, if the person suggests, like, for example, a tree. Oh, are you sharing your screen?
Yeah, could you see it?
Yeah, I can see that. So, if a person wants to draw a tree, like how would you guide them, or are you going to tell them to draw first and then draw afterwards, or are you going to draw together with them?
In the start, I will ask them to describe their tree, like whether it has like a big leaf bunch, whether it is a pine tree, whether it's a winter tree, whether it's like a summer place tropical tree, that kind of thing. If I have to go more in detail, maybe I think a bit more in detail, because like I've seen incredibly large number of imagery. So I have, maybe I was keen to invest my observation to see, okay, if it's a winter situation, the trees look a bit like this when you go higher. Like for example, you see more pine trees as you go up higher in the altitude. Or if you go down, you have much more denser trees, or based on season, which season you want to draw. So that's the thing. So say okay, I'm going to draw a summer scene, a tree, and then now before I'm drawing, I'm thinking of how much leaves. So lots of leaves, green of course, and thick trunk. So that being said, so I'll draw, of course. So my focus is more on the exterior shape of the tree. So I'll start doing from the outward. And usually, like even though trees are not exactly symmetrical, it has this sense of symmetry towards its left and right side, unless it has weathered in some way. So usually the trunk is in the center, and the tree has like this way of spreading outwards. So that's done. And once it's done, I'm thinking about thick trunk. So thick trunk means I'll draw like this. And then I have to see how it connects to the ground. That means I have to draw the ground. then as I think about the ground, what comes to my mind about a tree is the roots. So how the roots penetrate the ground. And now that I'm in the roots, I'm thinking about the the texture of the trunk. So each trunks are different. Some of the trunks are smooth. Some of the trunks has this kind of veins to it. Some of them are dry, which has this kind of scales. I think you call it scales, right? Like this kind of the lines, vertical lines. So the trees, the trunks have these kind of scales or scales that kind of.
Well, I think scales is like when it's like pieces of wood that are almost if you look at if you look at a crocodile skin, it has scales, right? So which means like
Yeah, I mean,
parts together. But
usually,
some
yeah,
depends on the tree. Some trees, yeah, like they just have lines. Some
really,
trees,
yeah. Based on how old it is, like older trees are very thick chunks of wood. Okay, anyways. Then and then the branches spreading.
hmm.
So yeah, so as we see, like it starts thick and then it goes thinner, and then thinner, and then thinner. So then we know that whatever is closer to the trunk is thick, and whatever goes farther is thinner. The same thing. That's right. And now when it comes to coloring, so we know that. So I said I wanted to draw like a summer scene. So in a summer scene, usually the sky is a bit more bright of blue. So just think of that. I'm not going to draw the whole thing, but I'll say this is the color of sky. And in that time, usually the leaves are really bright in color. So so the leaves will be of this color, say bright green. And then the trunk is like brown. So let's say this brown. I mean, I could have used Copic marker. Now it feels like I'm overwriting on
So
the
in
lines.
Sketchbook they also have digital coping markers.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know. I didn't know this. Hmm.
But yeah, I think I'll continue. I'm using ink pen now. So yeah, so now we have the rough color theme. If you now again, it depends on how much time you're willing to spend on that particular artwork. So if I want to spend more, like I want to go more detailed, what I would do is I would think of lighting. So how the light works. So usually in a summer daytime, it's really bright. So the light comes from top, which means the whatever is not facing the light will be darker. So so the underside of the tree. So usually the underside of the trees are shade. So it will be more of a dark green compared to what's above. And then because the underside is under shade, the trunk will be slightly darker. Yeah, I mean, so now we almost roughly there. So the idea of tree is on the place. We have the colors in place. Uh, Now, if you want to make it particularly look like something, then we go for study. Now, what I would do is, okay, I want to make it look a bit more detailed. Then I'll go look for some pictures, and I would look for particular, say, particular way the trunk looks. And if I'm not able to imagine that, I'll just go see the trunk and see the textures. Then I'll try to replicate the textures. Or if I want the leaves to look the particular way, then I'll look for certain ideas. So that's how I collect ideas from things. So when it comes to imagination, everything is like a Frankenstein monster. So you're just collecting inspiration from different things and then you're bringing it to your own. That's when it becomes more unique than being looking. It looks like something. So yeah, that's the idea. Add more details to it. This is what I was telling you about yesterday. Yeah, so to add more, so okay, there's a farm. Say there are some more funds underneath. Now I'm thinking about a person sitting under the tree. So when it's far, what you see is usually you see the form, like the shape in which the person is sitting. You don't really see his face. You don't really see much details on his clothes. So that makes it actually easier than things. So now I'm thinking about a person who is leaning on the tree. So as I try to draw the body, I'm thinking like, okay, if I was sitting, I would just sit with my head leaning on the trunk, with my arms up and behind my thing, and then I'll just keep my leg folded up. So now you'd be wondering why this feels like a dismembered body part. That's because you need to draw the clothes also. And I'll think of, say, he's wearing a blue dress. So that's his arm, that's his torso, and then he's wearing a black pant. So and black shoe. So if you want to go more details, he has some hair. You can see at this distance, you can see the hair. You can see like roughly facial idea, not exactly the face, but usually, yeah, you don't see, when you don't see much detail with the idea of what it is, our mind adds a bit more detail using whatever it can see. So you just think it's a person, then you imagine he has a face. So automatically your mind fills up for, okay, he has two eyes and he has one nose and a mouth. So as you stare, you actually start seeing it. It may not, even though at such a distance, it may not be really what it looks like, but you kind of start to draw that figure out of whatever you can see. So yeah, I mean that gives an idea, and if it's a summer, I'd rather look to be in a shade near a water, so I'll draw some water. So water has this kind of wavy kind of thing. I might be drawing a bit too fast because I have drawn it a lot of times, but the idea as I see is as I draw, I'm trying to see how I would have seen water to be. So it has a bluish kind of thing. It has this white lines because during the sun, it has this shimmery thing to it, so you see these kind of white streaks of lines on it, which makes it look like the water is moving. So that, and if there is water, then there will be also reflection. Then you try to draw like reflection. And usually reflection, as it goes farther from its object, what it is reflecting, it becomes a bit less detailed actually. It's more detailed wherever it is closer. And yeah, I mean,
No, it's a
it's
yeah.
the whole thing.
No, that was a really impressive. Like seeing, I mean, even the kind of like just figuring out. Even you didn't even thumbnail or anything like for the composition. So yeah, it's
Yeah, I mean, initially as I draw, that's the thing about drawing from imagination. You kind of improvise as you see, and usually that's how memory works. You kind of get one idea, and then as we bring the idea, it's like a thread that you pull. So once you've got the thread, then the thread is connected to something else, to something else, to something else, and comes. So yeah, I mean, it all started from the idea of drawing a tree, but now as you draw the tree, now you have this feeling of experiencing the tree. So how would you experience a tree? Either you would think of climbing it, or you would think of being under its shade. So how do you experience it? By putting a person there. So let's say you imagine the person to be you. So you put yourself there, and then you think of how you would sit there or enjoy that shade. Then you think of how you are sitting, and then you think of all the other scenes. What would please you, like be it a waterfront, or be it like a barn behind, be it a blue sky. Yeah, it's usually comes from this desire to experience it, and then try to be in that place where you're experiencing it, and then try to see what you see if you were there. So that's the idea of imagination. It's the same thing. It's the same thing with objects like cars. So when it's cars, then I would think of, if I'm not particularly able to visualize exactly how it looks like, because imagination sometimes is very clear. You have this vivid imagination which has all sorts of details. If it doesn't have that details, for example, like you could think of only the headlamps, but you could not think of the body. Then you look for reference in your head. So how do I do that? I look for, automatically my mind starts thinking about the movies I saw, different movies I saw, and the different cars that we use, be it like or spaceships, or some kind of vans. Or I would think of, okay, I was in Bangkok, for example, like I've seen better looking cars in Bangkok than in India. So I will try to go back to Bangkok and try to remember like cars that attracted me. It is random. I do not need to remember the whole experience there, but then something flashes. Like I think of Bangkok, then I think of all these Beetle cars. Like very rarely among all these Corolla taxis and something, there is this old person or an old lady who's riding a Beetle car among the crowd. That caught my attention. So I want to take those the round shapes of Beetle into it. Okay, now my body is figured. Now I'm thinking about streets. I'm thinking of, say, I want to draw that. Usually when you think of cars, somehow Japan has this vibe. If you want to draw a city, Japan has a city vibe where you want to place your car. And I think that's what most manga and anime artists do. That's why Japan is super inspiring. So you draw the cars. If you want to draw a futuristic car, you could pick Japan. Or if you want to draw this old school, like deserty kind of vibe, then you think of like some American desert vibe, like an old dusty road,
yeah.
and then you build up.
No, no, that's why I broke down drawing with 3 steps, which is observe, visualize, and like draw. Right? So So you need to. It's a cycle. So you need to
Yeah.
read those.
Observation is inevitable. It's just that we don't consciously notice that we are observing. We are always observing, like all the time. That's why, like, how to say, when we think of something, we think of particular things that is very prominent, or that is very reasonable to what we need to think about at that particular moment. But as a human being, or as the way our body works, we're constantly seeing everything. Like if I'm seeing in the front, I'm constantly seeing everything. The sense of like the focus, for example, because I'm a photographer, I would say in our camera we have this sense of focus where we say, okay, I want to see this clearly, but I do not want to see anything else. That is not a physical phenomenon. Our eyes do not have this capacity of blurring out everything. Our mind has the capability of doing that. Our mind wants to invest its interest on particular object and not see other things. But as eyes, we are seeing everything. Like everything we see equally. From the center towards the boundary, we see everything equally, and we see. It's just that we don't think hard enough to recollect on those details because it's not important. So that's what does when we, for example, when we are thinking about some trip we had, we might not have really noticed particular thing, but somehow when we are going back and thinking about it, we might be remembering some little things that really didn't matter. But somehow it comes to our memory because it's just randomly there. And now, because we do not have much to think about, we pull out all those things that we thought irrelevant, and it starts getting its life in our imagination. So that's the thing, yeah. So if you think hard enough, then it's always there. And it's usually easy to know that it's it's easy. We remember things simplified. We don't remember as this tree, that tree, and so many different ways. We remember it as trees, and a tree has a general idea. So once we have that idea, from there we have to divert. For example, for what happens in generally when I try to speak with people who always say I can see and draw. I'm not talking about people who just quickly give up that and say that I don't know how to draw. I'm not going to try also. I'm thinking about people who say, okay, I can draw, but I cannot draw it this way, or I need to see something to draw. This tip is for them, and it is like, yeah, it's like seeing things, and the idea is each different objects is not completely different. Everything has this own fundamental idea to it. You just have to focus on that. Somehow, like, people say, okay, I can draw houses but I cannot draw cars because they categorize it as different things. But when you ask them to describe, as they try to describe it more and more, they have this sense of understanding that, okay, now they have an idea of what a car is. So once it's there, it's not too far from putting it down on a paper. So you have basic fundamental knowledge about wheels, okay, round wheels, and say, okay, square body, and then that's what kids do, right? Kids do not think of details. They just see it as a big blob of thing, and for them they see, okay, the body is square and the wheels are round, so they put that because that's the information that they have. They put it down, but once they put it down, they can go and revisit all those shapes and then add more details to it. That's my suggestion. So try to describe it, and then it will become more easier to draw.
Yeah. No, I was also paying attention to yeah, it was great. Like you broke the reflection with the ripples on the water. Like
Mhm.
yeah, that's also So that's good. So like so yeah, I mean, like you said, like there are people who absolutely don't want to draw, so there's no point in like forcing. Nobody has to be forced to draw. I think like and I think usually people who are interested in draw but are scared to draw from imagination, maybe yeah, they should not be, because nobody's, first of all, nobody's going to look at it if you don't show it to anybody. So so it's all about your experience, your process, enjoying the process, and it has to be fun. So,
Yeah.
and especially for like younger, like young cartoonists, like people who are just starting, um, they already ask questions about tools and what paper should I use or what, and they're like, no, just first, like, just enjoy drawing what you love drawing. Just keep that fire going, and then.
Mm.
But then at some
But
point, yeah, you
the
will be bored. Like, and then okay, so then okay, you have to
but
take.
the thing is like the desire to draw actually changes the way you observe things. For example, like in my sense of photography, like the way I used to see things before and the way my eyes looks into details, it kind of zooms in to try and see particular details of things happening in front of me, and then it goes out and then sees the whole picture, and it's constantly changing different perspective. And that happens as our interest grows. So once I have decided that okay, I'm seeing this now, I want to see it differently, then the search happens from your senses to see the same thing in different ways, and then it becomes more and more creative. Like okay, now you're looking at particular close details and trying to see. So now if I have drawn this whole thing, for example, when I was drawing, I was just building the whole idea together. Now I have a more sense of the person now, so I would think of like okay, and my observation goes into the shadows. So now I'm trying to add more details to it. These details were never in my head until I drew the first draft, right? But at the same time, when I'm trying to do it for the second time, my mind is already calculating the second things into account. So it's iterative. So for the same time, I would be thinking of more elements in my composition than I did it for the first time. Because now my mind has the ability to capture more information than what I did before, because I have a better understanding of. So yeah. And I think tomorrow I will try to do it in paper also, rather than
Oh, really? Okay, you're okay.
rather than digital. For some reason, like when I was attending your meetup also,
Mm.
and also Karina's meetup,
Mm.
people who do not have access to a digital environment, or who do not do digital, they immediately disassociated themselves with your style. And you also say that I have control Z and then I can rotate, you can rotate and all those things. And immediately they, I mean, I have seen my friends do that also. Oh, you are able to do this because you have a tablet, and because I don't have a paper, I cannot fix it, so I'm not going to try. So that immediately says that okay, I'm on a paper, so mine is bad. You have a digital thing, so your what you do is a good quality.
Yeah.
And once they have decided that, their interest will fall drastically. They won't even try to come close to understanding what they're doing. They will just say, okay, if I had this, I would have done it. Because I don't have this, anyways, whatever I try, it won't be as good. So I'm not even going to try. And I think that's
Yeah.
why people are not interested to share the screen. Like no one wants to show their process, and you have to push them to show what they've done, because they think with their ability and their medium, they cannot bring out whatever they can. So yeah, I mean,
Not to make a commentary about education, but like,
go on.
No, I was just going to say, like, not to make a commentary about education, but like, people are not encouraged to make mistakes, so they're, but actually, if there is one place, and okay, not only one place, but like art, like you can make mistakes, not
Mm.
like,
Other thing, yeah, I mean, depends on like whether you want to show you're good at art or whether you want to get it out of your head and put it on a paper. That's the thing. Uh, that's the
um,
whole idea.
any other notes that you've taken regarding like the imagination, your
I think that's about it. Uh, Probably like now it's just one composition. Like if there are three people joining in the meetup, then there are three compositions, and each taking 25 minutes to go
okay,
through, like including me drawing and them trying to draw it. It will,
yeah,
I think, go into 2 hours easily.
yeah. And you'll see, it's it's funny. You'll see like people. Most people will not talk, right? Like they don't really respond to you. Like, I mean, I do it anyway. Like I ask people, do you have any questions? But then people will respond.
I mean, uh, my idea is because people in that meetup they don't really know me, so
Yeah, I mean,
they may not.
even if
Yeah,
you,
yeah. Even in your case, I understand. But usually, what happens is those who know you based on that, those who do not know you will react.
hmm,
See, like those who know you, they stay quiet and for different reasons. Maybe for example, like in your last meetup, there was this Kim. I don't know if her name is Kim.
yeah,
She was from Internations, right? She felt
yeah,
like she was a co-host of some kind. She's from Internations too.
yeah. I mean, she's a regular. I mean, she joins every week.
Yeah. She seemed to be rather observing the whole event, like the whole proceedings of the meetup, rather than focusing on what you were teaching.
Ah, okay, really.
And yeah, I mean, she was like focused on others and then people joining in and how many people are there, about
Hmm.
uh, yeah, she was becoming more active when you asked other people to show their work.
Yeah.
And she was trying to encourage other people to show their work and share it and stuff. So yeah, I mean, in that case, that's why she was quiet for most part of the bit, and she only jumped in when she wanted everyone else to jump in.
Hmm.
So same way, like those who are new, they usually look around. So that's the usual habit. By the way, do you see my face?
What do you mean? Like your
Like
camera?
along with my shared screen, do you see my face?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool. Because I do not see the window where my face is there, so I just see yours as a small window.
Sometimes it
I think
collapses.
it's collapsed. Right, right.
No, collapse is the opposite. Like, how do you call
With
that? It goes up. Uh,
expand.
uh,
Yeah. I think I just saw the button because just for a moment, I became a bit conscious about my movements. I didn't know
okay.
whether I was being seen or not.
Okay. So I think so. First of all, like yeah. Thank you for like the demo. So should we wrap up?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, I think this is not the first time you join my video on this channel, but can you plug in your other social media links and
Okay.
also
Sorry. So yeah, that's my photography account, and you can visit me there. And yeah, I'll see you there. If you if you want to chat with me, you can just text me there.
okay. Cool. No, thank you, Venky. So
You're welcome, Boris. Always nice to talk to you.
yeah.